Alright, let me scroll up. I'm missing a bunch of messages. You want to make a script that optimizes Spelunky 2 performance because you have a friend with a shit laptop and you want to make the game playable for them. I commend that effort. You want to remove particle effects and shaders. The thing to do is to figure out like what is killing their performance to begin with. Is it like graphical or CPU? Because obviously they can go into the options. I'm assuming you did this, but I have to go over this just in case. You can go into the options and reduce like various effects. Let's see, where is it? Split visual effects, that one. You can reduce this. I don't know what this does really, other than make your lava look terrible. There's high, normal, and low. And if you go to low, I think the ripple effect from bombs goes away and the lava just looks like super flat and chunky. Yeah, the ripple effect from bombs is removed. I don't know what else this does exactly. There's probably maybe people that know what that does that I'm not familiar with. I run it on medium because I don't like how much bloom is caused by the highest setting. So I just run it in the middle setting. That's really the only thing you could do performance-wise, but you got to figure out like why your friend's laptop is performing badly at the game to begin with, which is unfortunately hard to do. Because otherwise I worry that you're going to like go through a lot of effort for nothing if it doesn't turn out to be the lava. Let's see. Yeah, already on lowest. Definitely graphic. Thinking of removing the bloom with a mod. People have terrible performance in Hundun, you don't get why. Hundun is... So if somebody's computer can't handle liquid physics, that will do it. I'm pretty sure Switch gamers have trouble with that, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's all the liquid physics. Like, the two performance, like, impacts on this game that I'm aware of, the things that absolutely, like, destroy performance for, like, low-end, like, computers, and spoiler alert, the Switch is a computer, so are other consoles. The thing that usually kills it is either the graphical like effects of all the liquid or just the collisions of all the liquid. Seems to be the thing that causes problems. Because it doesn't have to be on screen for it to fuck up your performance. Like Switch players in a large sunken city cosmic ocean level, the game is basically unplayable. Like if you're in a co-op run with a Switch player. Because their game is literally running at a lower frame rate than yours is. And if they start interacting with the RNG pool, your run is probably going to end to you teleporting into the ghost or something. Or the jelly, rather. So those are the two things that I know of that usually cause problems. I don't have either of those problems. My Spelunky is pretty much always running at 60 FPS, unless I, like, again, do something incredibly stupid, like spawn a ton of entities in one spot. So I unfortunately don't have a lot of insight into this because I don't get that kind of lag. It's very hard to say for sure what the problem is. But I commend you for trying. Maybe you'll be able to figure it out if you can get the shader to just render a flat texture. But I thought that's what the low quality setting basically does anyways. Like all the bloom is pretty much gone when you do this low quality setting. I'm not sure how much more you could optimize that. Yeah, it's not entirely gone. To be clear though, there is a little bit of a lighting effect. And then this fog this is actually like a particle. This is an entity, I think. These little like fog particles on top of the lava. There is a lighting effect. And I'm not sure how that shader is actually encoded. Does it reduce... Oh yeah, it did reduce the volcano particles, didn't it? The only performance you've had is online parallel universes. Yeah, you know, online really is parallel universes. Like, it literally is. Like, there's multiple states. Like, this got exposed recently. I am keeping an eye on this. But there are apparently, like, slots in memory to store states for the current level. And to be clear, I can't use these in Task Wizard because these do not persist across levels, and there's currently no way to serialize them. So I can't, like, actually utilize these in Task Wizard until they get a better API for us to interact with them. I also don't have a call that I can use to know when a save state is loaded, so we can't really use them for like in-place like playback and recording. I am aware that these exist, and as I understand it, these are the states that are used by online co-op to simulate the other players in your game and kind of play catch-up when you get a packet of inputs from the server, and the game will load that state. It will play through it with the inputs that are received from the server. That's how desync will happen. And I think it swaps it into like your main like thread or something. I'm not qualified to explain this because I don't fully understand everything that's going on here, but essentially it juggles these states around based on updates it receives from the server for the other clients. And that kind of dictates like how the rollbacks play out. It depends on when you receive an update. And if your Switch gamer is playing at 55 frames per second in a large Sunken City Cosmic Ocean level, and they pull RNG, you're going to get the update that they pulled RNG like several seconds after it happened, and your game is going to roll back based on that information. It's going to replay everything that that Switch gamer would have caused to happen by pulling RNG 5 or 6 seconds ago. And that could just fucking cause you to just die. If anything you did depended on like the movement of an enemy or something and it moved slightly differently, then you're just fucked. You're just gonna be somewhere else like 5 or 6 seconds later. It's very gross and bad, and it's the biggest downside of the rollback system. Polling, like with an O, not a U. Polling RNG just means like asking the RNG system for a number and then advancing it to the next value. And it's very important for the rollback system. And unfortunately, if you have somebody who is back literally, like, I mean literally playing in the past, if your Switch player is running their frame rate too slow, then their game is actually several seconds behind yours. And anything they do will get sent forward to your client, and your client will re-simulate the last 5 or 6 seconds based on the latest actions of your local Switch player. And that's why having a laggy Switch player in your game causes everything to just fucking teleport around, because RNG is so volatile in this game that just about anything that you do somewhere in the level is likely to affect RNG a few seconds later. It'll affect RNG a few frames later. I just don't know the exact technical details of how these save state slots actually get swapped out. That's the thing I'm not qualified to explain. What I do know is I cannot use them yet in Task Wizard. I'm keeping an eye on that. I'm watching the developments because there may be some really cool things that we can do with that. Like, I can already use them here if I needed to. Like, if I jumped in this lava, for instance, I could, let's see, what is it? Shift F5, and I think that's Control Shift. So I can save state with Shift F5. I should have one now. Yeah, now I can load it. So, oh, Shift F1 is how you load it. So if I jump in this lava, turn off God mode, and then Shift F1 out of it, I'm just back up here. And that's essentially a rollback. Like, that, I believe, is the same thing that the netcode would have done. Complete with the glitchy onk sound effect, because the onk does not work correctly in online either, and you get weird, like, stuck audio. It actually stopped playing, but it was playing some stuck onk, like, audio effects for a moment there. I think that's what they're doing with the states. Like, Drago, if you're still here, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think online is essentially doing the exact same thing that these buttons are doing here, where it is just loading states. Except online also, again, plays back some inputs from the server, and then it shows you the outcome of doing that. Hopefully I'm on point with all that. That's my understanding of it. It's consistent with everything I've observed. Let me change my graphics back. What I was just showing there is that this is already pretty potato as far as the graphics are concerned, but there is a little bit of bloom from the lighting. I just wouldn't be able to explain to you how to remove that, because I don't know exactly how that works. I don't know how that works at all. Let me change my graphics back. I want my beautiful, crisp, medium graphics. Alright. So let's see here. Doing something, their screen is doing something else, so maybe you're dead, but the best move that you can make, if you have a crusty Switch player in your game and they're just fucking teleporting around doing stuff, you have no idea what's happening, just stop moving. The only thing you can do is stop moving. If they're in comms with you, tell them to stop fucking moving around. But if they don't press any buttons, then the rollback engine will stop mispredicting. That's the only way that you can really fix that. So if you have a Switch gamer and they're in comms with you, tell them to hold still. If they're in a large, like, Voice Echo's Tide Pool level, they need to just not move for the entire level, or else they're going to start causing rollbacks for everybody else in the game as they start, like, pulling Jiangxi RNG, which will cause all the other Jiangxis to do something completely different. And it's just an absolute mess. So that's my recommendation for that. And if they're not in comms, you stop moving and wait for them to die, and hopefully they will eventually stop pulling RNG, and then you can play the level. They very often tend to die while that's happening, in my experience. Or disconnect. Either works, really. We can talk about rollback in a moment here. Let's see if we can finish this off. So what do we got? Do we know how often it makes a save state? Probably every time it receives a packet with inputs from the server. I've never monitored the network traffic, so I don't know for sure, but I think that's when it makes a save state. And I believe it does this for each client independently, since I think you can get out of sync update packets for clients. But again, I have not watched the network traffic, so I don't know for sure how the server decides when to send you an update packet. But until then, you are essentially just assuming that the client is holding down the buttons that they were holding down for the previous update. So that's what a misprediction would be in that regard. A misprediction would be if you thought a player was holding right, and then you get a packet that says, actually 20 frames ago, they stopped holding right and jumped. And then your client would have to roll back 20 frames, simulate what would have happened if they had pressed jump on that frame instead, and then go from there. And if them not holding right somehow resulted in your outcome changing, then you will suddenly find yourself in a slightly different position. Or if they like whipped you or something, you'll get snapped back 20 frames to the spot that you were at. Oh, I'm dying. To the spot that you were at when they whipped you. Alright, it copies over... Hold on, it scrolled off. It copies over 32 megabytes of memory, changes all the pointer offsets in that... Oh my fucking god. Twitch, stop scrolling it down, please. Why is it so hard to kick in that feature? Alright, changes all the pointer offsets in that memory block to the new base. Copy state is just copy pasted directly from that. Drago, how does that work with entities? You know what, I'm gonna ask this question now. Where are entities in memory? Are they in a fixed spot, or do they just use like malloc or something and just end up wherever? Like, how does that work with entities? Is there just 32 megabytes of space for entities and then your game shits the bed if there's too many? Or is there something else that happens with those objects? Because surely the entities are handled like roughly the same way when you copy state, since some entities might exist in one state and not the other. So how does that work? How are they stored? Do they share any information? Okay. Hold on, I need to scroll down. You might have responded. Give me a second here to catch up on everything else. Bully sometimes trolls by trying to cause his own rollback death with a landmine. What a fiend. You can actually use that mechanic. Like, if you want to, say, find out what's in a mystery box and you have, like, a player who's really laggy, you can have them, like, feint whipping the mystery box in the shop and then back out on their client before they actually hit it. And then you will see what is in the mystery box for a few frames before it rolls back because they didn't actually hit it on their client. Because their actions are what will dictate whether or not the mystery box opens, not what you perceive. So you can actually abuse that. You can use that for crates as well. And rollback damage is very common in co-op. Things like setting up landmines. It's infuriating when you have a player with 1 health in the Ankh, because every single time your client sees that player take damage, it starts the Ankh cutscene, and then the rollback says, oh, JK, no Ankh cutscene. But the Ankh cutscene fucks up the audio, and audio does not roll back properly. So you get weird, like, muffled audio interactions that eventually go away after a few seconds, but it's very distracting and irritating, to say the least. We have a custom... Oh, is that a response to my question? They have a custom allocator that always allocates in that 32 megabytes. So in theory, Drago, does that mean that this game just fucking, like, crashes or something if you make 32 megabytes of entity data? Well, that's huge, though. If it's a custom allocator, that might mean stale reference manipulation is consistent. That's actually really cool. If that's how they do it, if they don't use malloc and they have just a block of memory, that means stale reference manipulation is probably consistent. And what that means is that we could probably do something with it instead of just crashing the game every time. If you can manipulate what's in that slot in memory, that's actually really fucking cool if that's the case. Like, essentially, if it's deterministic and it behaves the same way on every platform and every instance of the game, then that is very abusable, and I'm now more motivated to look into it again. and see if we can figure out how that works. You got saved by a random player because they left the game frame perfect. Yeah, people leaving, for some fucking reason, the server doesn't send you a disconnect packet. So instead you just kind of, I mean, if it sends a disconnect packet, it doesn't work because you end up just sitting there waiting for like 10 or 15 seconds for their client to get kicked out, and then anything that they did during that time has the potential to get rolled back. I don't know exactly how that works. It's not quite the same as a laggy player, but you can get rolled back by players disconnecting, depending on other clients like perceiving that they did things before they actually got dropped out of the game. Sometimes it's helpful. Usually it just results in you suddenly being dead. Like you're alive 1 second and then you see somebody else like kill themselves with a bomb and you're confused, and then suddenly you're dead and all of your items are on the ground. And it's because like something else happened in the rollback system and somebody else had like the last laugh on like what you were doing on that frame. I don't actually know how the game resolves that situation where people perceive like a different outcome from a disconnecting player, but it's definitely unpleasant, whatever it is that they do for that. Who controls the server? I'm gonna defer to Dragu for this just to double check. I'm not crazy, right? It's client server. Like Spelunky Online is client server. People say it's peer-to-peer. There's no way it's peer-to-peer, right? It's absolutely client server. The clients do not talk to each other. They all go through a server. Please tell me that I'm like correct about that because I want to be sure that I have that right. My understanding is that it's always been a server and it is not a peer-to-peer connection. It just looks like one because of how crusty and janky it is. But I'm pretty sure that there is a server that's responsible for mediating the like inputs that are produced by each player and sending them to each other. It's possible that I'm wrong about that. But the thing is, the servers, quote-unquote, can go down. Yeah, it doesn't do anything but relay messages. Yeah, it's essentially a relay. What I'm almost certain I have correct is that the server doesn't actually simulate. Let me get away from this lava. I've been talking over it this whole time, and it's just been bubbling. The server... Okay, hold on. Let me catch up on chat, and then let me give the rundown of what I think the server does, which I think my understanding of how the server works is about the same as everybody else. But I'm more than happy to be corrected if somebody has actually monitored the network traffic from it. So first, let's see. What are we talking about? We got more rollbacks. Injection into Spelunky. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, if you are opening a can of worms if you're going to try to make your own injector for Spelunky. I would highly recommend whatever it is you're trying to do, that you try to like ride off of Overlunky to do it. Because they have taken care of so much of the work already by making the script API and Overlunky. Rolling your own is definitely not the way to go. If that's like what you're speculating on doing, you could probably get Overlunky to do the thing that you want, or add the feature yourself if you know what you're doing. Like I consider myself to be a very like technically inclined individual, even if I have no direct experience with like actually injecting into applications like this. And I would have no fucking clue what I was doing if I tried to make something like Overlunky. It's very complicated. It's been built up over the course of years. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. The wheel we have right now is already pretty good. The wheel we have right now only sometimes crashes when you delete chain blocks. It's a pretty good wheel. It's got like a couple holes in it, but you know it holds air. You like working, you want to program your own injector. Alright, good luck. I'll just say good luck. I do not want to shit on people's dreams and aspirations. If you want to try to learn how to make an injector, good luck with it. Maybe you'll succeed at it. I don't know how much background you have in the field. This is just a warning. If you are not like super experienced in this stuff, it is going to be difficult to do it, especially for a game like Spelunky, which is big, complicated, multi-threaded, not very well programmed, and you might have to deal with netcode depending on what you're doing as well. So this is definitely not a very good video game to learn how to do that, but you might be able to figure it out. Well, I'll leave that up to you. Let's see. Okay, so I think I'm all caught up on chat. You want to make more... Okay, yeah, more dynamic injector. It's your wheel now. Yeah, go for it. Now you can make a better wheel, or at least a wheel that's really good at doing the specific thing that you want to do. It never hurts to have people like try to redo things if they want to learn about it. I'm just saying, if you're only doing it for the sake of like the end goal, it's probably not worth your time. But if you're doing it to learn, go for it. Someday I'm going to have to go through that same hump because I want to learn how to do this stuff myself. The game always has the 128 MB bytes. I fucking hate that word. I'm just going to say megabytes, even though it's technically not correct. It always has the 128 megabytes of memory allocated in case you want to play online. Okay, so it literally just blocks that off and says like, yeah, I might need to throw 4 more states on it. Okay, so then there's a main state and then 4 additional ones here, and it shuffles them around and changes like a pointer or something. When you have a mad, super insane tool that patches every issue in the game, I better apologize. The problem with tools like that is they're not speedrun approved, and also not everybody will have them. I know you're joking, but like in all seriousness, it would be nice to patch this fucking game, but like you can't count on people all having the same patches, and a lot of the bugs are just part of the game, especially for speedrunning. And on online, you also need your game to function exactly the same way every time, or you get desync. So unfortunately, it's not a good investment of time. It's something the developers should be doing to ensure that everybody's getting a consistent experience. It's only when a game is like absolutely dead and you're playing with like a small community that you all know has the same version of the game that you could justify like starting to patch things like that. The only thing Overlunky has been doing is like patching crashes and stuff. But mechanically, it's not supposed to change how the game works. It just prevents it from crashing in situations where it would otherwise do so. Which, I mean, you could argue is changing how the game works, but that's not really in the same sense. I mean, I suppose you could make an argument that you probably shouldn't be running the patches while you're speedrunning, because, for instance, the teleporter door cancel thing doesn't crash when you use Overlunky. And it's because of the patch for pets entering locked doors. That, for some reason, that patch actually fixed the telepack crashing. So there's a few things that Overlunky did do that could, like, arguably interfere with the mechanics of the game, but if they're all, like, crash-based, I would argue that that doesn't really matter that much. There are no speedrun categories on Moss ranking for crashing your game. And you would just need to turn off that feature, specifically if you, for some reason, wanted to crash when you use the telepack during the door cancel state. This is a silly game, and we make silly categories here. If I have time, could I please check the video? Yeah, I think I was going to check that next and then wrap up stream pretty soon here, but we're just having a conversation about the client server, rollbacks and states and jank. I think we're done with the lava at this point, so I might have cut the VOD earlier than this. I don't really know yet. Because anybody who bothers watching this will find out later. But now to summarize my thought, my understanding for how the server works in this game is it's client server. I'm not going to actually do it. We're not going to be doing co-op here, but I just want to show this like as I talk about it. So you go in here. This right here, I believe, is the game. Like, I don't know how exactly they handle this step of it. I think this is connecting you to a lobby. I don't know how many servers they're hosted on, but this, I believe, has connected me to a lobby somewhere in their system. And it's just sitting there waiting for me to do something. It's waiting for me to queue or to like invite friends or something. But I am in a lobby, I have a code, and I just have like an open connection to some server that they have. I don't know if this is going to get like redirected to a live server later, but I'm in a lobby server of some sort. Anybody else who had my code would presumably get connected to the same like lobby. And then when we all start the server, what I think the game does is it does a little bit of handshaking and makes sure everybody is on like the same adventure seed. And then it like sends you to a server that will synchronize your inputs. And I believe that is all that the gameplay servers actually do. It doesn't know anything about Spelunky. It doesn't know how the game works. It is just there to synchronize inputs and screen changes, is my understanding of what the game is actually doing on the server. And so once you're in the server, you all start off at the same seed, on the same frame, with the same game state, and then from there it is just saying which inputs got passed back and forth between players. You can make a script that plays online without actually having the game open. Probably. I mean, you could... I'm not sure why you would. You could probably fake a client. You would have to like dig into the actual like handshake that the game is doing. But you could probably spoof a Spelunky client. I don't think it does any like security checks, so to speak. But you don't quote me on that because I don't actually know. I just speculate that there's not a lot of security checks on this game because you can have like duplicate Steam clients and stuff connected to it. So it's probably possible to do it. I don't know why you would do that. I mean, it's not like you're going to be like AFKing for scrap metal in Team Fortress 2 or something, but you could probably do it. What I will tell you is please don't get yourself into trouble, because I would assume that although they don't really have a ban system for this game, if they notice somebody like sending like malicious network traffic, like excessive traffic or something to one of their servers, they probably have the ability to blacklist your IP address. I don't know for sure, but I would be really disappointed if they do not have the ability to blacklist an IP address if it's like actually attacking a server. So yeah, don't do that, and don't accidentally do that either. As in, like, don't accidentally have a loop that is just going to send a shitload of data to the server and just like look like it's like fuzz testing it or something, because that might also get you blocked. I don't know what security measures they have in place, and I don't know how they ban you from it either. So don't do it. Be careful if you're going to mess around with that kind of thing. You probably don't need to do that. But again, I don't control what you do, so just be safe about it if you try it. You gotta go? Alright, see ya. Have fun making your injector if you decide to take on that endeavor, and of course, good luck with that. So anyways, once you're out of the lobby and you're in a server, which we're gonna pretend that I'm in a server now. So now we're in a server. We can't actually go here because we don't have the technology to load the camp, but you have two clients. There's a little bit of jank that goes on with like the game state flags to make it online, and essentially each client has their own camera, but as far as the game engine is concerned, it is the exact same game state. If it's not the same game state, you have desync. And the way that desync works in this game, just as a visual demonstration, I could actually, I think, use the save states to kind of explain what I think is going on here. So you've got a server like this. Let's just say we started at the door. And Rafi is lagging because it's Rafi. Of course he's lagging. Pretend he's a Switch player. Give myself a little bit of a runway here. So Rafi is lagging and he's a Switch player. And you start the game and he hasn't pressed any buttons yet because his Switch is having trouble like loading into the level. So like the server has mediated the level load. It says, okay, everybody is ready to start the level. We're done syncing, whatever syncing does. Even I don't know what syncing does. And then Rafi doesn't press any buttons for a second, or you don't get a packet for that. So what's going to happen is, we have a save state now for Rafi. So it's just going to be this one. So save state 1 is Rafi's game state right now. So I start running forward like this. And I do that for a little while. I've been running forward for like 60 frames or something. And then I decide to jump like this. Let me actually make sure that I can survive that jump. And then I get a packet from the server that says, Rafi has finally caught up and decided to tell you what Rafi was doing. So I get a packet from the server, and it says that Rafi threw a rope on frame 1 of the level because Rafi is a griefer. So what happens in that situation is your game is going to simulate everything that happened starting from the point where you got Rafi's inputs. So I've been in the level for, again, about 60 frames right now. It is going to do this. It's going to load state 1. This all happens in the background. It's going to load state 1. It's going to simulate Rafi roping my ass as I was trying to hold forward at the start of the level. And then Rafi just like... Oh, actually, I pressed my rope button. Pretend Rafi threw that rope. It's going to essentially simulate the other player throwing the rope. You know what? No, that's not good. We can do better than that. Disregard. Rafi throws the rope. I need to figure out which button I have bound to rope. Hold on. Is this your card? This one. Got it. First try. Alright, so Rafi just threw a rope while I thought that I was running forward. So what happened is, it's going to simulate 60 frames of input. So 60 frames have not passed yet in this situation. So Rafi roped my ass. Then he runs over here and picks me up and throws me in the spikes. And then 60 frames have passed. I am now caught up. So what happened in that situation was I went from me, Valerie, jumping over this spike pit to suddenly being roped, being picked up by Rafi, and being thrown over this spike pit all in one instant. My client in the background just did a bunch of unrendered updates to catch me up on what would have happened if Rafi had roped me on the first frame of the level and then tried to throw me into the spikes. So in this sense, you are at a disadvantage if your connection is better than Rafi, because Rafi can just fuck you up and you don't even know that it's happening yet. And you get rolled back into whatever like arena bullshit Rafi was performing. It's kind of like fast playback. I wouldn't be surprised if actually that's what happens. Dragon might be able to confirm whether or not, but I think that might be what actually happens in the background, is the fast playback mechanism that Task Wizard is using, where the game essentially simulates a frame of game state updates, but it doesn't render it. And it essentially plays back the input sequence that it got from the server that Rafi had performed. And this is why you would roll back into a situation like this. Again, as far as I'm concerned, as a co-op player, I went from being completely fine trying to jump over this spike pit to being teleported back to this rope and then over here suddenly in this position. I didn't even see myself at the rope. I literally just snapped from being here to being in this state, missing 1 health, and Rafi is just throwing my ass into the spikes. That's what that looks like. That is what a rollback essentially is. And this could happen with 4 people, and if they're all lagging, and they're all pulling RNG, and they're all fucking with each other's game states, you get a nightmare. And it's why this game is so miserable to play with people that have bad connections. Not people with bad ping, but people with bad connections. So for instance, if I were to instant restart and simulate another situation, this is what it looks like if your Switch gamer is just lagging, like tremendously. So again, we have the start of the level. We're going to make a save state. I know there's hotkeys, but I don't remember what they are, so I have to keep checking them. Let me remember them. Okay, shift to save, and then -4 to load. Alright, so shift F5. So we have a Rafi save state, and I could go play through the level a bit. So let's just do it with frame advance. And then Rafi catches up, and he starts walking to the right a little bit. So what the game is going to do is it's going to simulate me all the way back to this state. I think shift F1. It's going to simulate me back to this state, except now I received the information that Rafi held right for 10 frames. Now, he whipped. Let's just say he whipped in this situation. But that's fine. Rafi whipped and then started running to the right for like 10 frames or something. This is the game state that I'm in right now. So this is now Rafi's game state. So I'm going to save state 1 again. Shift F5. So this is now the information that I have about Rafi. And it's going to simulate that he is holding right in this situation, and I'm suddenly stunned. Instead of down here, I'm over here. Let's simulate like 20 more frames. A little more than 20. Oops, I just got a packet that said Rafi actually turned around and started following Valerie. So we go from this save state right here to this one. And then we simulate it where Rafi was holding right for a few frames like this. But then he turned around. Like he saw that there was nothing over there and he decided to run back in this direction. And this is now the state that my game is in. So if I go ahead and do this, we have 2 states. We went from this, oh my god, I actually got it framed perfect. This should look familiar to you folks. We went from this state to this state right here. I actually sniped the same exact frame for Valerie. Valerie's inputs have been consistent because I am the client, I am this player, so my inputs look perfectly smooth. But Rafi went from basically a misprediction of Rafi holding right for like 40 frames to Rafi holding right for like 10 frames and then turning around and going back in the other direction like this. That is essentially what this looks like. Now imagine this happening several times per second. That's what actually happens in a live game with a laggy player. It is your client mispredicting and then getting an update for that player of an alarmingly large number of frames where it says, actually, that player was not doing what you predicted. So you need to go load their state, you need to simulate what they were doing for that span of time, and then that becomes your current state. And it's going to be whichever set of inputs you last received is going to be the one that your state update's based on. And the server is kind of the broker for those inputs. So when you have 4 people and they're all sending inputs to each other, the server is responsible for making sure that everybody receives the same sequence of inputs, time-stamped with the same initial frames. I don't know how exactly to describe the model for 4 players, but it's kind of analogous to what's going on with 2 players here. The 2-player model is just very simplified. But we have access to more states. I don't actually know what it uses all of these for because there's 4 of them, but you can only have 3 other players in the game. There may be some other function for the 4th one that I'm not familiar with. Maybe it's just used to like swap memory around or something. It's tough to say. There was probably some reason for them to do it. Or maybe it's just leftover for some other idea that they had in the past. But all the server is doing is just transferring inputs between each other. And then there is one other thing that happens, however. So I'm going to keep playing the level. I'm going to turn God mode on just to go to the end of the level real quick. I'm surprised I got the frame right. I just guessed it. I eyeballed it. So this is the other thing that quite often happens. Is you're trying to go into the exit like this. So you press your exit button. Let me, let's see here. I'm trying to think how to simulate this. I'm going to go ahead and save state. So we have a state here. Rafi is dicking around lagging at the start of the level. And you do this. And then you, okay, I advanced 1 frame too far, but you're sitting at a black screen essentially. So I can't show this because I'm Valerie, but what could be happening in this situation while I'm not frozen or anything, while I'm just looking at a black screen, is that the game is waiting, the server is waiting for Rafi to catch up to me, is what's happening right now. So you'll probably notice if you leave the level that has the crusty, laggy Switch player, the game just kind of sits in this screen for a while and nothing happens. You can't menu, you can't do anything. That is the server waiting for Rafi to like more or less say that he is caught up with your inputs. So if Rafi is lagging, then what's happening is he is watching Valerie play through the level all the way to the end on his client. And it's not until Rafi sees Valerie enter the door and trigger the fade out that Rafi is going to catch up and say, okay, I'm good to go for the level transition. And again, I don't know how the server mediates that exchange exactly, but what can happen in this situation, which I don't think I could do anymore because I left the level, is I think that you can actually get rolled back out of this state. If the circumstances are just wrong and something happens in the level that actually prevented you from leaving the level, you can actually get rolled back out of this state and get pulled back into the game. If Rafi did something that would have prevented you from leaving, like pulling RNG so an enemy ended up in your way. It's weird, and this is an edge case where I think even the server doesn't usually handle it well, because people will quite often get frozen in this screen. If they have somebody lagging or if somebody crashes while you're in this state right now, quite often you just get stuck. You get soft locked, and the only way to get out of this is to just end the process. And I couldn't tell you why. I don't know exactly what's going on in this situation that causes that, but the game does not like having a laggy player when you attempt to switch levels. And occasionally that's all it takes to kill your game session. It's very irritating to say the least. Usually you'll get through it eventually. This has inspired you to write bad netcode. Please don't. Or if you do, please don't do it anywhere near me. I don't want to deal with bad netcode. Same happens with Dark Souls 3 PvP. Whoever has the worst connection has an advantage. They can hit you where they see you. That may be rollback or it may be favor the client. It's tough to say for sure. Like if anybody has ever played Terraria has favor the client netcode, where you can see enemies where they aren't actually located on the server, and you can damage those enemies. And if your client tells the server that you damaged a demon eye or another player, the server will just say, all right, yep, you did that, and it will just give you the damage. Even if the thing you attacked is actually nowhere near you, you could just do that as a client on Terraria, and that is what I would refer to as favor the client. Some first-person shooters also do that. I don't know how Dark Souls handles that, but a lot of first-person shooters will also do that, especially for hit scan weapons, like in Team Fortress 2 with the laggy sniper. You can get shot by that sniper, and then 300 milliseconds later, the server does do a little bit of validation. I don't know exactly what it checks, but essentially it will kind of look back 300 milliseconds, and check whether that player could have landed that shot 300 milliseconds ago. And if they could, then it gives it to them, and you fall over after you're around the corner and die. Because the guy in Australia with 300 ping just shot you, and on their client it was a legitimate shot. Or they're a cheater and they're manipulating the system, but that's going to vary depending on the game and how secure the server is and how good it is at validating whether or not they could have actually landed that shot. And then rollback netcode is what we have here in Spelunky, where it's not like certain edge cases where you are allowed to get shot around a corner or killed by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to hit you. In Spelunky, it literally will roll back your entire game state to the instant in time that the other player performed an action that was mispredicted by your client, and then it'll just go from there. So having an extremely laggy player or somebody who's able to do lag switching would actually be horrendously abusable in Arena. Thankfully, I don't think anybody takes Arena that seriously in this game. But if you were able to lag switch for like 1 or 2 seconds at the start of an Arena match, so that everybody else thought you weren't moving, and then you send the packets that say, well, actually, I just threw a bomb at the player that was next to me. You could probably figure out a way to abuse that and get a leg up on the run, because everybody would roll back to your game state. I do not know what security measures, if any, Spelunky has for that kind of thing. I don't know what tolerance it has for how far back in time it's allowed to roll back. It seems to be a really fucking long time based on my experience. There may be other mechanisms in place I don't know about that would prevent you from doing that in Arena. I'm not sure. I'm not like offering this as like an invitation. I can pause this. I'm not offering this as like an invitation to like go try this yourself. I would really rather you didn't, because it might cause them to fuck with the netcode and make things worse if like an actual security concern comes up with it. Security either as in you could actually do something to somebody's client, or if you can just abuse the shit out of the game. Most likely they're not going to do anything unless there's an actual security vulnerability in the netcode, but as far as Arena games are concerned, like your friends are not going to like you if you start lag switching. Just don't do that. Don't do it in regular games either. Just try to play the netcode as well as you can. Remove your cable modem from your microwave. If you're on Wi-Fi, for the love of God, fucking get closer to it or switch it to 2.4 gigahertz. If you don't know what that means, look it up. Try to make the netcode experience enjoyable for everyone, because the rollback netcode in this game is both a blessing and a curse depending on like who you're playing with. Because it feels very good. Like this game feels very good to play if your netcode is cooperating, and it feels really fucking bad if somebody else is just lagging and teleporting around. That's kind of the summary that I have. Oh, by the way, if anybody who hasn't done this, do this right now. Go in here and set input delay to off. It's defaulted to 3. Don't do that. That's bad. Set this to off. Please set this to off immediately. You will never want to go back. That is it. That is all. That is my TED talk about like the netcode and what I think I understand about it, based on playing an unreasonably large amount of co-op in this video game and a passable understanding of how client-server infrastructure works in general. You've always had it off. Good. Turn it off. It defaults to 3. Anybody who has not turned this off, if you ever play co-op, set it to off. Because you want to know what the input delay does? It smooths it out. And this is one thing that I didn't actually explain when I was doing my little demo there. But essentially what this does is this adds intentional input delay to reduce glitches. And what they mean by that is that reduces rollbacks by 3 frames. So if it's defaulted to this, I'm trying to, before I say anything, let me think in my head how I want to explain this, because it's a little bit confusing. So just give me a second here to ponder over this. I wonder if that's what they use the last slot for. I wonder if that's what they use the last save state slot for, is to smooth these over, to differentiate the visible state of the game with the actual simulated state of the game. That could be what it is. The gist of it is, if you set your input delay to 3, then what's going to happen is the game is going to take your inputs. Yeah, maybe it doesn't use the save state. It's going to take the inputs that you submit, and it's going to kind of like put a buffer on them. So you're not going to see the buttons that you pressed until 3 frames later on your client. And what that does is that essentially gives the game 50 milliseconds to negotiate mispredictions with the other clients on the server. So instead of like, if Rafi has a reasonable connection and it takes about 10 frames to get a batch of like updates from Rafi, instead of that immediately resulting in a janky rollback, the game will be able to negotiate like 3 additional frames where it will seem like everything played smoothly because you are looking at a view of the game that is 3 frames older than it actually should be. So the same exact rollback still happens, but you don't feel it on your end because you don't actually see it. It makes the game feel a little bit smoother at the extent of you yourself being a slightly slower client. I don't think I explained that very well, but the gist of it is you only want this turned on if you're actually getting like considerably agitated by how visually stuttery and laggy the online experience can be. If like you and a lot of your friends have bad netcode and you're seeing each other jitter and you don't care that much about like pixel perfect inputs, or I should say frame perfect inputs. But the reality is, if you have an even passable amount of experience with this video game, you will feel this 50 milliseconds of input delay. And it is horrendous. And for some reason, they let you set it all the fucking way up to this. 16. This is like a quarter of a second worth of input delay. It is horrendous. I accidentally played like this once when I was trying to demonstrate something, and it is like, if you are good at this game, you will be miserable playing with that kind of input delay. I would highly recommend you set it to off entirely. And again, that will result in other players looking like they're jittering more, but your platforming will be pixel perfect, frame perfect. It'll be perfectly precise. It'll look just like you're playing single player. You just have to accommodate the fact that Rafi is going to jitter around a little bit more as a result of that. So this is my like public service announcement. Set this to off. Do a low percent on 16. Oh fucking god. Oh lord, no. I don't know how you would actually get this to happen in local like play. I mean, yeah, I guess I could actually do this with some tassing and manipulation of inputs. Well, not tassing, but I could definitely buffer 16 frames of inputs and then replay them in single player. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take the time to program the game to be able to do that. The other situation you could do this in, I guess, is if you got 2 clients in an online game and then one of them leaves, then you could do it in an online game. It would be horrible. Don't do that to yourself. Again, 16 is this many seconds. A little bit over a quarter of a second, and a quarter of a second is everything in a game like this. I think now we're done with talking about the server. So that is my unqualified like explanation of how servers work. Nobody said that I was wrong, so hopefully I wasn't wrong, but I don't think anybody else knows exactly how it works either. So I think everything I said here is at least like mostly accurate. There could be other mechanisms that they put in the servers to like mitigate some of these problems, but this is very consistent with my experiences with playing with other people in this video game. Rollback netcode is great until you have somebody with a bad connection, and then suddenly it becomes miserable. But the alternative is, well, I mean, there's all sorts of alternatives to it, and really this was probably the way to go, because this makes it feel like you're playing single player with laggy clients instead of you're a laggy client on a server, which nobody wants to deal with. You don't want to get like stuttery inputs. You want your inputs to be nice and smooth, and just hopefully everybody else is playing well enough that nothing weird is going to happen. Just be careful if you're like crammed into a tight space with somebody who's lagging. You never know when you're going to try to like pick up a shotgun and they're going to pick you up and you're going to just shoot the shotgun instead. Like things like that, or putting down the shotgun is usually when that happens. And again, that could be explained with the same problem that you have earlier. Like you have a shotgun in your hands, you crouch down and you place it on the floor so that you can go do something, and meanwhile the other player tries to pick you up. And what happens is if they pick you up last, then you're going to get rolled back, you're going to get picked up, and then you're going to fire the shotgun because you used your whip button while you were in their hands. And that's just firing the shotgun, because for some reason the developers didn't think of having down and whip drop the item even while you're being held. So you're just going to shoot the shotgun instead of putting it on the ground. You're going to break the ghost jar and everybody is going to die. That's the classic right there. Be very careful when you're scuffling in a corner trying to pick up items with other players. You're very likely to get somebody shot or hit with the scepter or break the ghost jar or have something get thrown randomly. It's kind of a mess. And they could have mitigated this by having down plus whip always drop the item in your hands regardless of whether or not you're being held. But the developers of this game did not take very long to design the online experience, and they did not bother doing that. So we gotta work with what we've got. That's any other questions, or is that it for the netcode? You make sure your router is positioned on the opposite side of the microwave. You keep running 24/7. Yeah, you're the problem with the online experience. Are you on a switch by any chance? Because that would be the other thing. If you could put your switch in the microwave while your router is like outside of it, that would probably be the proper experience. Average Switch gamer. To be real, like everyone here, I'm not like shitting on you for having a Switch and playing Spelunky on your Switch. I am shitting on Switch being a console with extraordinarily shitty netcode most of the time. Not shitty netcode, but shitty connection quality. Like whenever I'm talking about Switch gamers, there's two things that you can infer from it. I'm either referring to 12-year-olds that will pick classic guy, will fail to rob the shop on 1-2, will start griefing their team as a ghost and then disconnect, or I'm talking about legitimate players who just have a really, really bad connection and a laggy console because Spelunky 2 was not programmed properly to work on Switch, and it just does not perform well. And then Nintendo Online is also shitty netcode on top of that, and I think, correct me if I'm mistaken, I think you have to go through Nintendo's VPN to actually connect to a Spelunky server. So if they're having problems, you're going to be having problems. And on top of that, the Switch being a portable console means a lot of people play it in handheld mode, and people don't understand how to have a good connection quality on handheld mode. So the dock is in one room, the Switch is in their hands in a different room, and then their dock is wirelessly connected to their cable modem, which is in a different room again, and that introduces a whole ton of opportunities for interference with your connectivity. And that's just not good. Why would it require a VPN? When I say VPN, I mean that Nintendo has a network that functions as a VPN, as in all of the traffic on your Switch has to pass through Nintendo's private VPN. I know it's redundant, virtual private network. But what I mean by that is that Nintendo essentially obfuscates the connections going through their servers. You do not connect directly to anything. You connect to Nintendo's servers, and then Nintendo's servers connect to whatever the destination is. If it's an approved, certified Nintendo like host, which I think is why certification for online games and crossplay on Nintendo is so fucking awful. I mean, it's like that for a lot of other consoles too. Why would they need it to be like that? Because Nintendo wants control. I don't know if anybody wants to correct me in chat, because I don't like providing misinformation. I don't like talking about things I don't know for sure are true. Which is why again, like there's a footnote on this entire discussion about online, which is cosine might not be 100% correct. This is just an educated like assumption of how I think the server netcode works. And in the case of Nintendo, I believe that Nintendo requires your connections to go through their servers because they want to control your experience and what you're allowed to do with your Nintendo Switch. It probably reduces the odds of like security vulnerabilities. It probably makes it harder to jailbreak your Switch, though I'm sure people have figured out how to do that already. I don't know how long it took, but I know people have figured out how to jailbreak a Switch. I don't know how long it took them. And essentially, it just lets Nintendo control your online experience and forces you to pay for Nintendo Online. They also want money, so like being paid for it is a big deal. Jailbreak means that you have a console that has constraints on what you're allowed to do with it. Like you can only install certain apps through a specific app store. Jailbreaking means that you essentially break out of the jail that they put your console in, where you can only do specific things and you can just run arbitrary like executable files on it. And that's what jailbreaking means. And under the covers, the Switch is just an operating system. Like, especially in this day and age, like, if you have a console, you have a PlayStation, you got an Xbox, you got a Switch, you got whatever obscure console I'm not thinking of, the Switch is just an operating system. It's like Windows, or Linux, or a Mac. The Nintendo Switch OS, whatever it is, I don't know what it's based on. I wouldn't be surprised if it's based on a Linux kernel. It's just an operating system, and it can execute code on common, like, well-established architectures. I don't know what architecture the Switch is actually written in. I'm actually going to look at this right now because I'm curious. I could probably get this info. Nintendo Switch specs. Let's see what the processor is. I can figure out the architecture to some degree of accuracy based on that. Let's see. Okay, ARM CPU. Let's see, which one does that correspond to? I think that's... I'm trying to get my statements right here. I think that can just run like typical like compiled like 64-bit code. I know I'm grossly oversimplifying this because I'm not like up to snuff on all the terminology for this stuff, but this is just a CPU that you can have on a computer. Like it'll just run executable code. Let's see. Main CPU competitors. Okay, so it's a competitor to Intel and AMD. So ARM, Intel, and AMD, I think, are usually the big players here. ARM is established well enough that you can just take like arbitrary C++ code and compile it to work on an ARM CPU. I don't know the exact terminology. There might be somebody who's a bigger expert in this field. Again, I'm always happy to be corrected about this stuff. I'm not actually super familiar with the abbreviations for this stuff. But the point is that your Nintendo Switch is a computer that runs executable files, and it has a file structure underneath it. It's probably a common file structure as well. Like this stuff has been standardized for like the last like 1 or 2 decades now. It's not like the just Wild West era of the Nintendo 64 where you just fucking threw together whatever worked for a processing architecture and just nothing else could write code for your console unless they went through your SDK. Like things like, I think Unity engine, I think like Godot, probably like Game Maker and some other stuff are capable of compiling executable files for the Nintendo Switch. I forget if Unreal can do it or not. I think Unreal Engine can't work on Switch, but I could be wrong about that. But a lot of these other game engines, you can just compile an executable for your Switch. And the thing is, Nintendo doesn't want you to just run whatever you want on your Switch because they're afraid that you're going to use it for nefarious things, or that you're going to pirate their software and use like pirated copies of their Nintendo Switch games, which is a fair concern. Like they got to make money somehow. Like if you're pirating their games and then using their console to run the games so you can have like the gyro and all that, they didn't get the revenue from you buying their game. Like it's within their right to try to prevent piracy on their platform, regardless of whether or not you agree with that. So that is their incentive to kind of like close in their Switch. And like jailbreaking is the act of making a Switch that doesn't have those restraints anymore. Like some way to inject like any code that you want, any application that you want in a Switch, and to look at the actual internals of the operating system that it runs. Which I don't know what the operating system is. It's probably proprietary based on a Linux kernel, but I would not say that for sure without like looking into it to verify what it is. It's just Linux kernels are usually what get used for this type of thing in this day and age, because like the other options are Mac and like Microsoft, like Windows, and I highly doubt your Switch is running Windows under the hood. Windows ain't the operating system I would go to for that. But again, it's just a computer. And if you jailbreak it, you can get it to do whatever you want. Otherwise, you can only do what Nintendo wants you to do. Nintendo sounds awful. Nintendo is a terrible company that makes really good games. It's an unfortunate situation. Like, I don't have a Switch. I don't know if I want to get a Switch. But if I was going to get a console, it would be a Nintendo console, because they're the only ones that have games that I cannot play on PC without pirating them, that I would really want to play. And I don't particularly like piracy. I'm not gonna morally explain whether or not it's okay to do that. That's a decision you have to make at the end of the day. But I don't like piracy. It doesn't feel right to me. If I'm gonna play Nintendo games, I want to do it on Nintendo hardware, with the exception of games that are impossible to play. Like games that they are not releasing, that are not available on any kind of virtual console. Like, by all means, do what you want with those. But I don't want to just play Pikmin 4 on my Windows computer, because it just doesn't feel right to do that. Like it goes against the whole idea of capitalism and how to make profit as a company. I just wish that Nintendo wasn't so scummy about a lot of their business practices, and how they fucking shut down community projects, how they're super like against any concept of modding in any of their games. How they will take down random YouTube videos that just do things that they don't like and will just claim that it's their content. You're not allowed to show that on YouTube. They're super heavy-handed, and it's very gross the way that they go about doing it. And if that's justification to pirate from Nintendo, then again, you make your own decisions. Disclaimer, I am not condoning piracy. I'm not encouraging piracy. I am simply stating that you are free to have whatever opinions you want on the matter, and you may do as you please with your time. I have no control over it. But I'm just giving my perspective on the matter. Please do not play Spelunky 2 on Nintendo Switch. That's the gist of it. Just get it on PC. It'll probably run better. Nintendo Switch is a good console run by a bad company, and unfortunately it tends to lag a lot. Oh, this has been a fun conversation. Steam Deck. I don't know, is Steam Deck bad? I have no idea how Spelunky performs on Steam Deck. I don't know if there's any Steam Deck like enjoyers in the chat. I have no strong opinions on Steam Deck because it is a, like, it's not really a console, is it? It's kind of like, I mean, I guess it's kind of a console. Whatever you would call it, it runs your Steam library in a handheld device instead of your computer. I guess it kind of qualifies as a console. And I have no idea if it's good or not because I am not the target audience for the Steam Deck. The target audience for the Steam Deck is people that are up and about a lot or otherwise don't have the ability to like sit down at a proper PC to play their Steam games, and they don't want to enter the proper console market. They want to use their Steam library, but they do not want to buy a console to do so. So you buy a Steam Deck, which gives you access to a large number of the games that you could normally play on Steam. But you don't have to deal with like Nintendo or PlayStation or Microsoft or any of that. You just deal with Steam, which Steam is one of the best content distribution platforms in the world. Like, for all the problems that Steam has, it's not the Epic Game Store. And it is mostly just, you just do whatever you want. They have fairly mild anti-piracy unless like the developer goes out of their way to put something heavier on it. And it's as Gabe Newell said, give the consumers a better experience than the pirates. And it seems to work because Steam is making bank, and I have no problem spending money on Steam in order to play a game. It's super easy, it's super accessible, and if you want to use Steam, but you don't have a PC to play on, you can use a Steam Deck. Is the Steam Deck a good console? I think it's okay, is my understanding. I don't know anything else about it. I know that not every game supports it properly. I think most games unofficially work on Steam Deck unless they do something really fucking weird. And then there are some games that like will actually advertise as working 100% on Steam Deck. So usually they'll have like proper touchscreen functionality and other stuff built into them. I think Steam Deck has touchscreen, right? I'm not crazy. Let me fact check that. I'm pretty sure Steam Deck has gyro and touchscreen on it, but I'm not 100% certain. Let's see what it has on it. Thank you, Windows. Very cool. Okay, yeah, it has touchscreen. Okay, I knew I wasn't insane. So, like, a game can advertise as being Steam Deck friendly if they integrate some of those features that you would not get in a PC. I do not know if Steam Deck has gyro, and I'm not getting any information about that here, so it's tough to say. Actually, oh, there it is. No, yeah, it has a gyroscope. So Steam Deck also supports gyro, which, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that is if you tilt the console itself, the game can actually detect that and use that for like precise aiming adjustments, which Switch has that, and it's apparently really good. Again, I don't have a Switch, but my understanding is that the gyro aiming on Switch is actually really nice because it's much better than using a control stick. And you can of course combine the two things together. So like, Steam Deck is probably good. Check the specs, make sure the game you want to play runs on it, but if you're out and about a lot and you don't have access to a PC, it might be good for you. I am not sponsored by Steam or Volvo or Gabe Newell, but I'm just saying that's an option that's available to you. And I'm pretty sure you can also run just about anything on a Steam Deck as long as it's compatible with whatever Linux, Proton, something or another that they use on it. I'm pretty sure you can just run applications that aren't even Steam games if you know what you're doing. I don't think you have to jailbreak it. I'm pretty sure you can just do it. They just let you do it. Raid. I should have a command for that. No, AFK Arena is the command I have, but it just tells you that I'm sponsored by Raid instead. Let's see here. See if I missed anything. Average co-op experience. Okay, I think we're still on the subject of co-op. Let me look at that real quick, and then we're gonna do the thing Doodoo wanted, and then probably end stream. I'll catch up on chat. I'm missing a few messages here. I skipped over whatever Dragu said. I'll come back to that. We're gonna look at a funny co-op clip because we're still talking about co-op. So here it is. Here's a funny co-op clip. I don't know what it is yet, but Hectique is certainly having a bad time with those hourglasses, so I think I know what's going to happen here. Yep. Yep. You don't even need a Switch gamer for this to happen sometimes. This is just the authentic Spelunky experience. Heck is presumably having packet loss right now, if I had to guess what's going on, which can happen. And the result is whatever this is. It looks like 3 people have died now. Okay, and then it just ends. I don't know what happens after that. Yep, that's a pretty authentic co-op experience right there. You get to see my fucking Minecraft and RuneScape video suggestions afterward to get an idea of what I watch in my spare time. But yeah, what was happening there is Heck was probably having packet loss and was controlling the majority of the rollbacks in that situation. So he just kind of could do whatever he wanted. It does look like he definitely intentionally killed people in the middle of doing that because of the coffin thing. But that shows you that, like, you are not in control of the situation if you have a client that's doing that, because they get rollback priority because they're the last person to send an update for what they were doing on a given frame. So while they're not going to really understand what you're doing, they can perform actions with intent. You cannot, because you don't know where they are on that frame, whereas they know where you are on a given frame. That's kind of the gist of it. It's scary, because they live in the past, so they can just do things. Well, it's not so much that they know where you are in a frame, but they could see you as you were in the past, and then change the course of your future by doing that. Why do the hourglasses disappear? I'm gonna come clean, Cloyce. I don't actually know what the hourglasses portray. Because every now and then when somebody is lagging, the hourglasses will actually switch off of the lagging player and will appear on everybody else in the lobby except the lagging player. I do not know why they do that. I don't know what the detection mechanism is that triggers the hourglasses to show up. I don't know why it's 38 seconds specifically. It's bizarre the way that works. All right, let me scroll back up a little bit now. There's gyro. Might be fussy, but you would never buy anything simply because of the stupid ABXY button layout. I am not sure what the problem is with that. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Let me look at a Switch real quick and see if I can understand what you mean. Or do you just not like the symbols specifically? Because like all I've ever used is Xbox controllers, so. Does the Switch do it differently? Let's see. Oh, they're in different spots from Xbox. Oh God. Yeah, okay. I think I know what you're talking about. A and B are swapped, and then Y and X are also swapped from the Xbox controller arrangement. Is that what you're talking about? Let's see, what were these buttons on other consoles? It used to just be A and B. I don't know which Nintendo console introduced X and Y. But that's probably where it all went wrong. Yeah, Switch gyro is cool. Yeah, PC, you can mod those to PlayStation icons. PC modding is really the reason I would use PC over anything else, but it'd be nice to play some of the Nintendo exclusives. Like, I would have loved to play, like, Pikmin 4, for instance. Maybe someday. When I have more money, I'll probably, like, buy the Switch 2 or whatever console it is and play it on that. Layout is different. Super Nintendo, really? Was that the 4-button controller? Nintendo 64 only had A and B. Well, it had the other buttons, but they were like shoulder buttons and the Z button. Did they go back on it? Hold on. Super Nintendo. I want to look at a controller for one of these. Oh yeah, they did it all the way back in the Super Nintendo. Then they got rid of it for the Nintendo 64, and then they brought it back. What the fuck, why? I mean, to be fair, the Super Nintendo, I think, came out I know it came out before the Xbox, so I mean, who really was the one that broke the mold here and didn't follow standards? Like, who do you actually blame for this? Because, I mean, we're all familiar with Xbox, well, not we're all, but I'm familiar with Xbox controllers because Microsoft just supports them natively on, like, Windows these days. which is fucking great because I didn't have to do anything to get this controller to work. It just worked out of the box. It took a lot longer for PlayStation, and I think even Nintendo, to get their shit together and make their controllers natively supported on any platform by using actual standards. So Xbox was the way I went when I got these controllers. Well, one controller. I just had to replace a bunch of parts on it. That's not the controller's fault, though. That's Spelunky's fault. But the point is, I don't actually know who to blame for this, because Nintendo 64 didn't do that, and then they went back to the SNES layout after that. You barely know what the Xbox placements are. Everybody's got to be different. I do not know off the top of my head what the PlayStation buttons are. Like, I couldn't tell you with any confidence where a single one of the face buttons is, because all these platforms just do it differently. It's nice at least that in most PC games, it'll actually like let you pick the icons, or it'll detect them for you. One of those two things, and you could always like reskin it if it won't detect it properly, if there's any kind of modding support for the console, or not for the console, for the game that you're on. Like, I don't know if Spelunky properly detects which controller you're using, but you could always just mod the buttons yourself to make it look a little bit more clear. You've used Nintendo, DualShock, and Xbox, and you can mentally toggle between each style. Well, I think in most cases, people just kind of remember where the buttons are. The problem is, I think if you're not familiar with the buttons and you see a prompt on your screen for which button to press, that's when you're going to get confused. If you're used to like two different controllers and you have to mentally swap between them, or rather if you're not used to one of the controllers, that's going to fuck you up. Because like if you ask me what button do I have bound to like rope or something in Spelunky, I'm not looking at my keyboard right now. I don't know. I actually don't know which button it is off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you. I know where it is on my keyboard. It's on the number pad. It's 9. I think it's number pad 9. And I'm looking at my keyboard, and yeah, it is number pad 9. Like, you develop muscle memory for this kind of thing. So as long as like the functions are in the same spot, even if the buttons are labeled differently, you'll probably be able to figure it out. But if you don't play the game very often, or you don't use the controller very often, that's going to get confusing really fast. Auto detection sounds nice, but DualShock is so bad. Oh, did PlayStation really not get their shit together? Or wait, is DualShock a PlayStation thing, or is that some other technology? Like, Blue Red's talking about Nintendo DualShock, which are two words I have never seen right next to each other in a sentence. What the hell is DualShock then? I thought I understood what this was. I thought it's like the controller like framework or something that Sony uses, right? Why would Nintendo be using that? Yeah, it is. This is a Sony product. Yeah, it's the Sony controllers. That's what they're DualShock controllers. That's what they call them. So I don't know what Nintendo... Oh, there's supposed to be a comma there. Okay, I was fucking confused. I was like, what the hell's Nintendo DualShock? Like, surely I'm not that out of touch with the technology. Please, punctuate. I'm not even giving you shit about the Oxford comma. I just put the comma between Nintendo and DualShock. Alright, I understand now. I'm no longer as confused. Alright, so it sounds like PlayStation hasn't gotten their shit together, but I think the Nintendo Pro Controller works on PC pretty well, right? I'm not crazy. Like, it's just a USB controller, isn't it? So like it may not detect as a Nintendo controller, but I thought that it follows all the same standards. So like all the buttons are in the same places, was my understanding for Pro Controller. So like you could just use your Pro Controller on PC to play Spelunky and it wouldn't give you any trouble. I just don't know if it would detect it as the right icons. Oh, do you know what Spelunky does specifically, or is there some other like function for that? Like, is there any mechanism for a game to automatically, like, just know what the type of the controller is? Or do they have to do some, like, hardware ID check to figure it out? Like, I thought it was a per-game thing, whether or not it detects the type of controller that you have plugged in. Okay, Spelunky 2 detects it. Steam detects it. Yeah, so maybe if you use Steam API for your controller inputs, you could probably get it through that. If you're doing any kind of, like, direct input from Windows, you might be on your own. I don't know, I've never had to develop a game with like this in mind. Everything I've ever programmed has worked on keyboard. So it's something that I'd probably be able to figure out, and maybe I would understand the agony of getting PlayStation controllers to work right on PC. Well, this has been a fun conversation. So are we done talking about hardware and netcode at this point? I do want to look at the thing that dude linked to me like an eternity ago. But I do like these conversations. This is interesting. I occasionally get a bit of insight. Let me scroll up and see if it's still here. There it is. Okay. Alright, well, if nothing else specifically on this subject, let's do a little bit more science before we end the stream. So, let's see, what do we have here? Could I explain in detail how to implement rollback netcode for your 2D platformer programmed in C? No. Unironically, one of the things I want to do, I don't know why I said unironically, one of the things I would like to do at some point in my life is program netcode for a video game. Because I spend so much of my time talking shit about bad netcode in other people's games. I have never done it myself, and I need to know if I am full of shit or if it's actually not as difficult as people seem to make it. Like, if you fundamentally understand all the edge cases and what you're trying to accomplish and what kind of netcode would be better for your game experience, can you go in like with an educated idea of what to do and get it right, like within reason on the first try, and not just have an absolute dumpster fire of like laggy, shitty, crashy netcode? Because my god, the only game I've ever played that had good netcode was Factorio. And that's not that game. You don't even need to play multiplayer to get the most out of that. I go back to Factorio so often. I'm like, Factorio did this right, it did that right. Whatever your thoughts are on the gameplay itself, that game is solid as fuck. That game is like unbreakable. And their netcode, I think, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's client server, and I think it uses catch-up mechanics. So like you have a little bit of delay as your client catches up with information from the server. Don't Starve's netcode is not very good. That's not going on the list of good netcode. It's not terrible, but Don't Starve Together's netcode is also not very good. You get hit by a lot of things that you don't think you should have gotten hit by. It's crusty and weird, and you could trade that off for input delay, which is crusty and weird in its own wretched way. Well, I've played it with and without lag compensation, and if you don't have lag compensation, then you're just very rubber bandy and sticky and weird, and it just feels bad for a completely different reason. It's a matter of targeting it for like the type of game that you're playing, or using a hybrid mechanism where you favor the client or the server for certain interactions. I want that challenge at some point in my life. I want to make netcode for a video game, and I want to do it right, or I eat my words and I don't talk shit about netcode for somebody else's video game ever again. I mean, my theory is that I'll probably be able to get it right with enough effort, but we'll see about that. Someday in the future, if the opportunity ever arises. Or if they need somebody to write netcode for fucking Corby and Curse or something. I don't know if any of them are even going to make that game multiplayer. I haven't talked to them about that. I have no involvement in that project. I do want to play that game at some point on stream. But I want to write netcode for a video game, which is an incredibly bizarre like dream to have, an odd aspiration to have in my life. But I can't just be shit-talking people nonstop when I actually may not know what I'm talking about. Like, just make good netcode, forehead. If about to desync, return don't. Exactly. Why don't they just do that? The thing is, it's a good challenge, but I need to have a reason to do it. I need to have a problem to solve. I don't just want to write netcode for nothing. So I will have to find an opportunity at some point in my life to do that. DSC netcode is the state changes cancel your buffered action. Is the buffering, that's a new feature, right? The state changes shouldn't fuck with that. That's not a mod anymore, right? They added that as a base feature to the game. Because yeah, that definitely doesn't sound good. My problem with the netcode was always just how brutally unforgiving the combat was in the game. If your like client or server was anything less than perfect, it was either you live with sticky inputs and you see yourself get hit and you can't do anything about it, or you get really good at dealing with the lag compensation, so it feels like you're playing better, but then you just get hit by things that are nowhere near you. Yeah, getting stunned in that game in general is miserable, but we're not here to complain about Don't Starve Together. I had my gripes with that game as much as I've enjoyed it. Buffered action, okay, just a single buffer. I thought you meant like a multiple chain buffer, like it was dropping your inputs. I mean, one of the things that I fucking get pissed off by that they might not have patched is when you, like, interact with a grass bush or something, and your character, like, starts the animation and leans down, and then just nothing happens. And you don't actually do the animation, but I think that's a lag compensation issue. And on the server, I'm assuming you just stand next to it and nothing is happening until it actually begins the action on the server, or it cancels it for some reason. But there's a lot of, like, dropped information in the DST netcode. There's work that they could do on it. It was one of my gripes with the game, was the netcode was very stiff, and it felt like it would just sometimes not do things that you told it to do. Which gets very frustrating in a game where not doing something is life or death. If you're in the middle of, like, a fight and you're trying to craft a football helmet, then the game decides, instead of crafting a football helmet, I'm going to start the crafting animation, and then I'm just going to stand still for 5 seconds until it times out. They fixed that bug. Oh, thank fuck. Okay, whenever I get, like, just bamboozled into playing that game again, maybe I won't have to deal with that action, or that problem, because that was infuriating. That might be the bug that I was dealing with. That was, like, super fucking irritating, because it would happen, like, every 10 actions or so, where it would just get dropped and lock me into the animation until it finished. Oh well. Anything else? I'm gonna open up this clip. I might just, like, segue this into the... I keep saying segue. I might just combine this into the segment that I'm doing now. Let's see what it is first. No, you're doing something shop related. Okay, I think we're gonna cut off this segment here. We can keep talking about, like, netcode and stuff if we want to.